All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to welcome you all to our opening session of the 2025 Transfer Student Leadership Summit. My name is Carolyn Price. I'm a program coordinator in the Transfer Year Experience Office here at UT Austin, which is part of our larger first year experience program here at UT. Today, my colleague Jeffrey Mayo and I are joined by our esteemed panelists and student presenters for what we know will be an incredible discussion of the current trends and issues in the transfer world in higher ed. I'm thrilled to see such a great turnout on our Zoom today. I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us today. I know whether you're a student or a staff member or a faculty member or a researcher, you all have very busy schedules, so we really appreciate you being with us here today. For those of you who are new to our Transfer Summit, I just wanted to give some background on this event. We originally started in 2017 after Jeff Mayo, who you will meet in a moment. After Jeff attended the National Institute for the Study of Transfer Students conference, which is the NISTS conference, Jeff realized that although transfer students are often the ones making the change on their campuses, there wasn't at that time a national gathering to bring transfer students together to share ideas. So Jeff worked to create this event that would allow students to have a space to share and connect and to discuss their transfer programming tips from their campuses. So the first 3 years of this event were in person, largely drawing from students in Texas. But after COVID, this event has transitioned to a virtual summit, which has been incredible for us to be able to connect with transfer students and transfer advocates from across the country. So I'm so excited to see you all here. With all of that in mind, here are some of our objectives for this event. The first one is to spread ideas and initiatives to new campuses. So you'll be hearing from our expert panel today, talking about trends and issues in the transfer student world, as well as from our student presenters today, who will be discussing what they are doing as transfer students on their campus. So we're eager for you to learn something new that you can bring back to your campus. And we encourage you to discuss all that with your colleagues or your fellow students or whoever else you work with who supports transfer students. Second, we really want to amplify the student voices here. Since we know that so much of what is accomplished for transfer students on college campuses comes from transfer students themselves, we hope that any student participating today feels comfortable to get involved in the chat. Please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat, whether you're a student or have another affiliation. Tell us your institution, your transfer affiliation, but we really want to encourage you to amplify the student voices, but also just connect with each other in the chat. Third, we want you to build a proud and informed transfer network. We want all the transfer students to be able to bond over the shared experience of transferring. And I want you to feel comfortable sharing your transfer student pride. And lastly, we want everyone here to be able to experience a professional and supportive virtual conference environment. Whether you are a new transfer student who has never attended a conference before, or you have decades of experience in higher ed and have attended loads of conferences over the years, I'd like this to be a supportive and welcoming conference environment for everyone to build transfer connections. So now I'd like to touch on just some community agreements for our Zoom today. First, please keep your microphone muted unless you are the presenter, just to ensure that we can hear all of our presenters. Next, please take a moment to ensure your name and pronouns are displayed as you would like them to be. Next, I also want to remind you all that together we know a lot, but alone we will never know it all. So please engage in the chat, ask our presenters questions during the Q&As, ask questions of each other, really make use of the chat and the connections that you can make here today to help you learn from each other. We're all here to learn, so the more of you that participate, the more we can all learn from each other. Lastly, I want to remind you to create a safe space for a range of experiences and viewpoints. Speak from your experiences, speak your truth, but also do recognize that others may have other perspectives. So, we encourage you to seek to understand their points of view as well and to hopefully learn something new today. So now just some quick announcements before we get into our content. As you may have seen on our invitation, we will be raffling off a pair of Apple AirPods at both our sessions this week. So both today and tomorrow, we will be raffling off AirPods. We will be dropping a link to a Qualtrics form in the chat. So please fill out that form once if you would like to be entered into the raffle. We're going to drop that link in the chat a couple times until about the halfway point today. And then we're going to conduct the raffle at the end of our session today. You will need to be present at the end of the session to win. Just to help be as fair as possible, we're going to spin a wheel of names at the end of the session today. So you would still need to be logged into the Zoom call to claim your prize if you are the winner. Next, I do want to encourage you to connect beyond the summit today. Share what you learn with your peers and your colleagues. Follow transfer accounts. Follow each other's transfer accounts on Instagram, including We Are Transfer Nation. That's one that I know a lot of you might be familiar with. But connect with each other as well. I really encourage you all to build new connections from this summit and share what you learn from that. Do please check out the recordings of our previous summits as well. We will also be recording today's session, which will be uploaded to our website as well if you'd like to come back to it. But please feel free to share those session recordings with anyone who wasn't able to make it today or anyone who might want to watch at a later date. Lastly, hopefully you won't encounter any technical issues since you're already in our Zoom meeting. But if you get kicked out for any reason, or you have a coworker who's having trouble getting in, or you can't get back in and you needed to leave, you can email tye@austin.utexas.edu for support. We are also live streaming this event on YouTube. So if for any reason you or a colleague is not able to re-enter the event or get in the first place, we can also connect you with our YouTube live stream link. And again, just email tye@austin.utexas.edu for technical support as you need it. So our last major announcement before our panel. As I mentioned, this summit pivoted to an online event in 2021. And at that time, our office developed a project management tool to help translate the lessons learned from the summit into real change on college campuses. So we'll be dropping the link in the chat to a box folder that has this document. But you might find it helpful to look through as our panelists get started today, or you're able to access it after the summit as well. So you're welcome to go back and refer to it as you need it. But I hope you will discuss some of those questions and prompts with your transfer team at your institution. Here are some sample questions from the summit workbook. It does ask you to think about considerations like who's on your project team, who's the scope of your work, and what are the constraints of your work. So there's a lot of helpful questions and prompts in that workbook. And I really encourage you to use those resources as you might be reflecting on some of the lessons you've learned from the summit today, and bring those back to your team. So with that, I will turn things over to my colleague, Jeffrey Mayo, who will be moderating our panel discussion today. And I will turn things over to Jeff.
Thanks, Carolyn. I just want to reiterate her appreciation and thanks for everyone who's taking their time out today to talk about transfer student support, whether transfer is your primary, work responsibility, or it's something that you're personally interested in, that you go out of your way to support transfer students. We're really excited to have you here. I see a number of my colleagues from UT Austin and some of our student mentors there already participating in the chat. So please continue to use that chat to make your introductions and discuss the topics today. Also want to encourage using the Q&A function. We'll use that as our way of collecting questions for our panelists. We hope to keep some time at the end to have a few audience questions as well. But yeah, if you happen to pay attention to the higher education news, or like me, if you're lucky to maybe skim some headlines in your daily newsletter from Chronicle of Higher Ed or Inside Higher Ed, you likely have seen indications that transfer is both thriving and also struggling. Just last month, we learned from the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center that transfer stats improved for a second year in a row. By some measures, transfer numbers are even back or surpassing their pre-pandemic levels. For instance, nearly 1.2 million students transferred in 2024, accounting for 13% of all non-freshman undergrads, which is a higher percentage than it was at in 2020. However, just this week, the Aspen Institute and the Community College Research Center at Columbia University, both represented in our panel today, released their second edition of the Transfer Playbook Report. I haven't spent too much time with this edition of the report. It just came out Monday, I believe. But the researchers found that transfer rates themselves have not significantly improved since they started tracking in 2015. The increases in transfer, therefore, may be more of a reflection of greater overall enrollment, especially at two-year institutions, rather than any single drastic improvement to the transfer landscape in American higher ed. Combine all this with layoffs and massive restructuring at the Department of Education, and it can be really hard to gauge the current state of transfer and what to expect in the near future. Lucky for us, our esteemed panelists have all the answers to your worries. No, but we do have two great transfer experts here today, and I'm very excited to hear from them, true leaders in this transfer space. So quick introductions. We have Dr. Tatiana Velasco is a senior research associate at CCRC and applied microeconomist, specializing in education and labor economics. She examines how students transitions into and through post-secondary education, and their student outcomes and how they materialize in advancement in the labor market. At CCRC, Dr. Velasco currently leads the quantitative and economic research in dual enrollment pathways, using national and state administrative data to examine the determinants of student outcomes through and out of college, with an emphasis on understanding the drivers of inequities and the promising areas for policy intervention. We also have Bernard Huggins as a program manager with the Aspen Institute College Excellence Program, where he supports cross-institutional partnerships designed to improve transfer student success. Via programs such as the Maryland Transfer Student Success Intensive and the Aspen AASCU Transfer Intensive, Bernard works with higher education practitioners, university presidents, and other system representatives, both local and statewide level, to guide the development of new pathways for community college students to successfully obtain bachelor's degrees. Before joining CEP, he served in various student-facing roles at Valencia College, Penn State, and University of Central Florida. He is a proud community college transfer student. So thank you both for being here. And let's jump in. Let me see, we're going to spotlight y'all to, oh, there we go. Perfect. We're starting off today, and we usually start off these sessions with a basic question of acknowledging that higher ed is a niche kind of expertise, and then transfer within that is especially niche. How did you get into the transfer world? Can we start with Bernard?
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeff. And thank you for everyone for being here and being part of this conversation. Yeah, so I totally agree, Jeff. You know, even getting into higher education, there's no undergraduate program that prepares you to work in higher ed. So we all kind of arrived here in unique ways. I started as a practitioner, as you discussed in my bio, so working at a community college. I didn't realize I was doing transfer work at that time. I worked a lot with post-secondary outreach, so working with high schools, communities, really having conversations around the value of higher education and some literacy around transfer pathways and different workforce credentials like certificates. But my deep transfer work started when a few years later, when I started at a four-year institution working in a transfer and transition office. And at that time, the current provost was really invested in eliminating retention and graduation gaps between first-time in college students, so direct entry students at the institution, and transfer students. And transfer is made up about 50% of the undergraduate student population. So this was a huge deal, but it also underscored the fact that access wasn't an issue at the institution, right? And so a lot of times we're thinking about transfer, we're thinking about getting transfer students through the door, but that wasn't an issue at this institution. But so that really forced me to do a deep dive into the literature and best practices around the country for supporting transfer students. I even started looking deeper at our own institutional data and really quickly learned that transfer partnerships were mutually invested, well invested, very collaborative, but the trends and outcomes for transfer students were inconsistent from year to year. As compared to direct entry students where their success rates were on an incline from year to year, right? And I think there's a lot of more that we can get into about that in a little later. But I also attended, the National Institute for the Study of Transfer Students, so that annual conference. So Jeff, I've seen you present there. I've been following the work that you all are doing. You all are doing phenomenal work in your office. But that was a really pivotal point for me in my journey with transfer work, was because for the first time in my entire career, I was surrounded by folks from across the country that were really, really invested and focused on moving transfer forward, and often felt isolated on their campuses. And so while I had a huge team that I worked with back at my campus, it was really great to be part of that community. And so shout out to my folks at NASTS, Janet Marling, Emily Cottrell, Judith. They all have done so phenomenally in creating opportunities to learn and to grow as a transfer professional. And so I really credit a lot of my deep diving into this work to not just what I did on my campus, but also having the opportunity to connect with communities at conferences and such. And so yeah, so that was part of what launched me into this transfer success space, was really trying to address some of the outcomes within the institutions that I was working at.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, and yes, always great seeing our transfer colleagues when we get a chance to get together. So thanks for pointing that out. Tatiana, can we hear from you?
Yeah, and thank you for having me, and thank you everyone for joining. I always, as Jeff described in my background, I have a very academic background. I'm an economist. I've been an economist all my life since undergrad, but that really started because I wanted to understand how education can transform people's lives. Starting with my own experiences, I come from a working class family in Bogota, Colombia, all the way to here. That's thanks to the power of education and the power of higher education in particular. And so I've always done, I think I don't have any experience beyond higher education and researching higher education. And a lot of what I learned in my academic career during my doctoral studies and for the last 10 years has been around the power of community colleges as real engines of social mobility, and being an extremely powerful tool nationwide to really get people to the places where they want to be in the most effective path possible. But one of the things that I realized as I started my research in this area is that community colleges, the pathways from a community college to a bachelor degree are really complex and complicated, especially if you're a student who perhaps don't have the resources. Maybe you come from an immigrant family like myself, or you don't have the resources to understand, which credits you should be taking, how to get your community college credits to your bachelor degree, how to choose a bachelor degree. I didn't even know that you could get a bachelor if you started at a community college when I first came here. That was news to me. That's a very unique feature of the higher education system in the United States. And so I've basically poured all my learning resources, research experience into figuring out how to implement changes that can really be effective at expanding access and success in the transfer pathways for the students who would benefit the most of it.
Thank you so much for that and highlighting the importance of these pathways for many issues in society. It's much more than just degree attainment for its own benefit. It really makes a huge difference. So with that kind of introduction to transfer, much of the discussion around the current transfer trends and issues is impacted by the pandemic's lasting effects. A lot of the reports, at a minimum, reference to coming out of, the pandemic or this being the first years of the post-pandemic landscape. So I was just curious, what transfer issue has really been at the top of your mind lately? Tatiana, maybe we'd start with you this time.
Yes, I've really been thinking about, from an economist perspective, the differences in incentives between four-year institutions and community colleges. Mainly because when we think about, and like in the national conferences in transfer and in the conversations that we have between academics and practitioners and so forth, we're always putting a lot of emphasis on what's going on at the community colleges. How can community colleges get their students to a bachelor's degree? And we really are just starting to have a conversation about the role of four-year institutions, right? And I've said this in the past, and this is kind of my version of saying, but it takes two to transfer, right? It takes a community college and a four-year institution. And it's not like one is above the other. It's really a horizontal relationship. But the problem is that, especially four-year institutions, think about themselves perhaps facing incentives that are different to those faced by community colleges. Perhaps they're interested in, like, for example, selective institutions want to serve, the more traditional student, and they're just kind of like thinking about the transfer issues from a different perspective. And it's really challenging to get them to invest leadership and resources in aligning their course offerings to community college students. There's been some conversations about how state level policies can impact that and sort of like align the interests and goals of community colleges and four-year institutions. But it really, if four-year institutions, especially the more selective ones, don't engage in creating these transfer pathways, they can always find kind of like a loophole to get their way. It's hard to think about from a policy perspective what you could do, and a lot of people have been trying different approaches to this. So it's kind of like an open question that requires a lot more conversation and future research.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing up the incentives and how different institutions and even people on a campus can see how supporting transfer, making it easier, is either incentivized or not. That's a really important factor. Also, I think your "it takes two to transfer" is getting some love in the chat right now. We might turn it into like a hashtag or something. So, Bernard, how about you? What's on the top of your mind with transfer?
It takes two to transfer. You might next time you see me in person, I might have a tattoo of that. So thank you, Tatiana. I'm building on what Tatiana mentioned about, just the ecosystem that creates strong transfer pipelines. What I've been thinking about is how much the student experience is shaped or limited by the systems and structures we build. We talk a lot about student success, but when it comes to transfer, so much of the challenge isn't about the students themselves. It's about policy, like Tatiana mentioned, is about practices, what's actually happening in institutions and within partnerships that either create clear paths towards the degree attainment or create confusion for students. And what's really on my mind is the need for strong, more intentional collaborations between institutions. So community colleges, four-year colleges, institutions, and Tatiana mentioned, what are the state goals and accountability measures that really set the broader direction, and are they actually helping institutions to work smarter to serve students better? And so it's one thing to have an articulation agreement and have those policies on paper, but what actually moves the needle is the work itself and what's happening at institutions. How are leaders prioritizing transfer? How are faculty and staff coordinating across campuses? How are systems designed to make transfer more clear, seamless, and affordable? In the pandemic, I feel really exposed how fragile some of those systems can be. And I think we're at a really important point now where we can't keep relying on one-off agreements or isolated efforts. We need institutions to come together and commit to real sustained partnerships where transfer isn't an afterthought, but a central part of how they're serving students. And that doesn't only work when there's alignment. That only works when there's alignment across institutions and systems. So that the policies and practices really support the day-to-day work. So that's really been on top of my mind, is how can we take a student-centered approach to strengthening the relationships, the systems, and the leadership it takes to make transfer work better for students.
Well, Bernard, that really kind of leads me into my first question for you. This idea about where big, broad brushstrokes of policy kind of hits the road with the day-to-day practices, right? So through your involvement with the Transfer Scholars Network, you've aimed to increase the number of high-achieving, lower-income community college students transferring to four-year institutions. Can you tell us a little bit about how this program came about and what kind of work you do? And then second, based on what you've learned working with these students, what practices can staff, faculty, and particularly student leaders adopt to identify and support high-achieving, low-income students in their transfer journey?
Yeah, absolutely. The Transfer Scholars Network is just a phenomenal initiative, and shout out to my colleague Ben Fresquez, who really worked hard to get this off the ground and keep and sustain this work. And it really, as I learned more about the transfer, we call it TSN for short, it really derived out of a really powerful but like simple realization, was that there's thousands of high achieving community college students from low income backgrounds across the country who are really ready to thrive at a four-year institution, but too often they're overlooked or don't see themselves as part of that pipeline. So the program started as a collaboration between some community colleges and highly selective private four-year institutions. And these are institutions who have committed to wanting to enroll more community college transfer students, but they also have the ability and capacity to also meet the financial needs so that community college students enrolling at their institutions aren't financially burdened by the price and some of the residential requirements of some of these campuses. And so we're really grateful for our four-year partners for their level of commitment to that. But the goal of TSN was really to create intentional connections so that talented community college students, not just those who are surviving college, but those who are really excelling academically, have a clearer path and the social capital to transfer to institutions where they can continue to thrive. And so my role in the work has been focused on building the systems behind the scenes and making sure that institutions aren't just identifying these students, but are actively removing barriers and building relationships to support them through the process. It's really exciting. We just got an update from one of the students that they were admitted to their first choice school, and they have this great financial package that's gonna that zero cost out of pocket for the student, waive deposit. So like the 4 years that are participating in the Transfer Scholars Network are really, really invested in these students being successful. And what I've also learned from working with these students is that the biggest difference isn't just academic support, it's about being seen and invited. So often these students don't realize that competitive four-year options are available or affordable for them. So that's where faculty, staff, and student leaders really come in. And some of the most effective practices with this outreach is really being proactive about it, not waiting for students to self-identify. Faculty work with students, they see their high performing students. So involving faculty and helping to identify and start those conversations with students early about what their transfer opportunities could be. Advisors can be really helpful in demystifying the process and normalizing transfer to selective institutions. And student leaders, especially peer mentors, can help students see what's possible by sharing their own stories and encouraging them to think bigger. And so we engage a lot of our, we're so excited that now we have some alumni from the Transfer Scholars Network that have navigated through transfer to one of the 4 years and have graduated, went on to career. And so we're bringing them back to share with their other scholars around that message and making sure that our scholars who are participating in the program really feel like they are welcome, that they can do this, and that this is something that's well worth their while. And so, yeah, I'm really excited. We have a convening coming up in July where we'll be bringing in some of the former students and our community college partners, our 4-year partners. And again, as we think about doing transfer work well, we know the importance of bringing both community colleges and 4 years to the table to discuss and strategize and align and making sure that we have these shared goals.
That's fantastic. I took a lot from that. The focus on outreach, proactive outreach, where again, kind of what Tatiana was talking about, the burden not fully being on the 2-year school and on the student to do the legwork, but shifting some of that onto the 4-year school and student leaders can play a great role in that. For those of you who are able to join us tomorrow, a little plug, our student presentation is going to have a major focus on that component of how students can play a role in those partnerships and communications between the 2 years and the 4 years. So really excited for that component to be highlighted tomorrow. So Tatiana, my first question for you. You co-authored the recent report titled Tracking Transfer, 4-year institutional effectiveness and broadening bachelor's degree attainment, which highlights that outcomes for community college transfer students are generally low, especially among low-income minority students. Can you explain some of the key findings and conclusions from this report that our audience should know? And what role can peer leaders play in improving outcomes for community college transfer students?
Yeah, absolutely. We co-authored what became 2 reports, one focusing on the outcomes of community college entrance and another focusing on the outcomes of community college transfers at 4-year institutions. We co-authored that report with our colleagues at the Aspen Institute, and the report was published last year. So it also uses the National Student Clearinghouse data that we recently saw new statistics from, but we focused on the students who started in 2015 at community colleges. And what we found was very, in general, low transfer rates that are low and have been low for a while. So I'm just going to bring a few numbers for reference. I promise I won't load a lot of numbers on you. But what we've seen from previous surveys about the aspirations of community college entrants is that about 80% of them want to earn a bachelor's degree. They started at a community college with the goal of getting a bachelor's eventually. So to transfer to a 4-year institution and get a bachelor's. But the fact is that after 6 years of their start at the community college, only a third of those students are really transferring to a 4-year institution, and only 16% are earning a bachelor's degree within 6 years. These numbers, again, are low and have been low from a while, going back to 2007, when the National Student Clearinghouse started to track and release this data at the national level. So things have improved only slightly relative to what we've seen over the years. And beyond that, these outcomes are low nationally, but they're even lower for the students who have been underrepresented in post-secondary education in general, that being low-income students and students who are Black or Hispanic, as well as adult students. So students who are 25-year-olds or older and who started a community college with the aspiration of earning a bachelor's degree. And so in general, making the leap to a 4-year institution is hard for all students, especially for underrepresented students. And once they get to the 4-year institution, it continues to be hard to get that bachelor's degree. So, sometimes some of the responses that you hear is that not all community college students want to transfer. That's false. We should actually start with the assumption that they all want to get a bachelor's degree. But even among the students who are successful at making the leap to a four-year institution, who's already a small group, only half of them are actually completing a bachelor's 4 years after transferring. So this is a very generous time window to get a bachelor's degree. So in general, outcomes are low, even lower for these groups of students. When one thing that we were able to do in this specific publication, and that has kind of contributing to shifting this gear and this focus to the four-year institutions, is that we found a lot of variation in the outcomes of transfer students, depending on the type of four-year institution that they transferred to. So for example, the students who transferred to predominantly online institutions, for-profit institutions had much lower bachelor completion rate than students who transferred to minority serving institutions, public institutions in general. So there's really a lot of variation and a lot of noise in the type of institutions, of four-year institutions that community colleges partner with. And there certainly should be some accountability on that to four-year institutions. It's not simply that you get to receive our transfer students because you offer, I don't know, different types of benefits that sometimes for-profit or online institutions may convey to the students and to the community colleges. You also have to ensure that they earn the bachelor degree and that that bachelor degree is going to lead to a sustainable, meaningful career. So that was another piece of the findings that was really important on the side of four-year institutions and a little bit discouraging. But on the bright side, we also find that students who took some dual enrollment coursework before they started at the community college. So this is high school students who were taking college level coursework while in high school. And so when they started at the community college, they already had some credit. These students tend to do a lot better in their transfer outcomes. This is not surprising. A lot of the research that I've been doing recently has been focusing on dual enrollment students and the potential that dual enrollment has to build pathways to bachelor's degree early on, starting in high school. So that's also another very promising area. And the last finding that I want to highlight is that while these results are somewhat discouraging, showing low transfer and low bachelor completion rate for community college students, we do find a lot of variation, a lot of different ranges of outcomes for community colleges, even within the same state. So if we look at a given state, for example, California, that has a ton of community colleges, yes, on average, the transfer outcomes are low, perhaps for the state, but there are institutions who are doing very well. And there are institutions who do well, not only for their community college students in general, but especially for their underrepresented students, like Hispanic low-income students, in the case of the data that we looked at. And so there's really some promise there. Like one of the questions is, okay, what are these institutions doing that even though they're serving the same students, similar students to other institutions who perhaps don't do that well, what are these institutions doing that can really lead to success? And so part of what the transfer playbook did, the transfer playbook we just got published, is that we took that data from the National Student Clearinghouse, identified those community colleges and four-year institution partnerships that were showing strong transfer outcomes. And we went, or my colleagues went, and visited them and asked them what was working. I don't want to take too much out of the spotlight from that, but a lot of it has to do with the people at both ends of the equation, leadership or the relationship in this case. The leaders at community colleges and four-year institutions that build pathways for students that make sense, leaders that see their community college students, see them all as future transfer students. They don't wait for the student to raise their hand and say, oh, I actually want to transfer, but plan with them, provide advice and support early on so that they know since day one what they need to do in order to get that bachelor degree. And so in general, there are a lot of institutions who are doing good work and strong work. A lot of it needs to be implemented at scale. A lot of it needs to be adapted dependent on the context of the institutions. But my main takeaway and the message that I want to leave you with is, yes, transfer outcomes are low. There's a lot of equity issues in transfer, but there are opportunities to grow. There is research that's trying to document those opportunities so that we can implement them in the practice in our field and in our institutions.
Thank you so much for that answer and giving so much more context to some of the facts and figures that folks will come across in both of those documents you referenced, both those reports. One of the big things I kind of latch on to that you talked about is just the idea that, yes, there are types of institutions that do better generally, but there's enough variation within those types that it truly matters what you do. It's not enough that you are a large public university or that you are a selective university. What you do matters. And at a lot of our campuses, those front lines are really led by student leaders, mentors, ambassadors, orientation leaders. These are the folks that are doing a lot of the face-to-face work with students. And so I appreciate you mentioning that, what institutions do matters more than what type of institution you are. I definitely want to leave plenty of time for our student presenters today. So I'm going to look ahead to one of our closing questions for both of you, and that will leave us some time for Q&A from the audience as well. But, Carolyn and I talk about, just how we're in awe of the positive impact that transfers can bring about on their campuses. At UT Austin, we have seen real change come about from the hard work and, honestly, the loud voices that transfer student leaders have had. Do you have any words of wisdom for our transfer student leaders on the call who are inspired to bring about change, but may see that challenge as too daunting to take on? What encouragement can you bring to our student leaders who are ready to make a change on their campus? Bernard, if you want to start us off.
Yeah, absolutely. My favorite student leaders, especially transfer student leaders. So I've worked with tons of student leader groups in my time on a campus, from Tau Sigma at the 4-year to Phi Theta Kappa at community colleges. And I think the leaders have been one of the single most important voices in moving this work forward on a campus. It's not enough for staff to communicate these things, the needs of transfer students to senior and executive leadership, but really the student voice is critical. And so my advice to you student leaders is that your time at your campus is limited, yes, but you can do all you can to elevate your voice and that of your peers to the leadership on your campus. So do everything you can to have those opportunities, to be with the leadership on your campus and to really elevate your voice, and again, that of your peers. So if you're hearing from your peers in the classroom, outside of the classroom, right, bring those stories into the conversations you're having with leadership. But I think what's really important to keep that work going so that your legacy continues is that you think about how you bring your peers along with you. So thinking about, that you're in your spring semester, this might be the transition period, but then how are you elevating and bringing up those active members of your student organizations, if you're part of student organizations? How are you helping the staff on your campus that might run and manage the parent mentoring process and programs? How are you helping them to identify some students that you've met with or seen that you think would thrive as a peer mentor, and helping to make those connections so that you can make sure that there are always going to be great student leaders in place to support the work of the transfer offices and the transfer staff, but then also to make sure there's always a place for them, that they understand their role in helping to support the work. And I've seen so many iterations, and again, I've been advising transfer orgs for years, and I've seen so many iterations in the ebb and flow of when leadership teams. I've had peer mentors. I did academic coaching with students in my former role, and so that ebb and flow of graduating and bringing in new faces, I think we've found our best and strongest peer mentors through other peer mentors. And so help bring your peers to the table and help them to understand what you see and how you find value in the work. And then don't be afraid to come back as an alumni to share your story.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up. As those of us who work directly with transfer student leaders on campus, if you only have certain students for 2, maybe 3 years, you know, even with first time in college students, at best you have a student for 4 or 5 years, and that feels quick. But when you have a student for 2, 3 years, getting them plugged in, getting them involved, getting them into leadership positions can be a real challenge. So having that pipeline where you're constantly looking at new members and who's showing interest, who's showing up, who is really interested in helping out their peers, is so critical. So thank you for focusing on that. And Tatiana, how about you?
I certainly want to echo what Bernard just said about all the recommendations. I also want to say um, to the student leaders in this call, you're already balancing so many things. You're also students, you're taking your classes, you want to excel, you have your personal lives. You're already doing so much. And so I really want to recognize that and having that in mind when thinking about how to best use your time when it comes to transfer leadership and support to your peers. Again, emphasizing what Bernard just said about involving the leaders in your campuses, especially if you're at a 4-year institution. One of the things, as I was mentioning, that's really important and that we keep on finding and stumbling upon as other researchers work and dive into the transfer challenges and pipeline is to get 4-year institutions leaders on board and to see the value, motivation, and skill, the ability, and the all the resources and input that they can bring to the 4-year campus and to the 4-year classrooms. Championing that with the leadership at your institution, it's really important. If you have few resources, then get that people in the leadership involved, show them what you're doing, champion your peers who are doing so well and who are really strong examples of what transfer success looks like. So that's definitely one. And then also kind of echo what your peers are doing. Be loud in terms of showing the successes that you have and also discussing the challenges. Be loud, but make sure that the message is reaching the right people and that you are always emphasizing the value that the transfer pipeline brings to 4-year institutions and to community colleges as well. We kind of we're already all in the same page on that. But yeah, if you have few resources, few hours assigned to this, then make sure that you're bringing in and pulling in that people at the leadership that can really create the change that can be sustainable beyond your years on campus.
That's a excellent point. Something that I picked up on was the idea of amplifying your voices to show transfer student success, but make sure that they're aware that that came in spite of challenges. I think sometimes the message can get mixed up that, okay, so why are you advocating for transfer students if they're doing so great? Well, they're doing so great because they're excellent students and they're extremely dedicated and committed, and they have very specific goals they're working for. It's not because they have the same resources as other students on campus, or capital as other students on campus. And so I appreciate that you mentioned both of those things, that don't just talk about the successes, though that's important, but make sure that it's understood that that came in spite of challenges and not because of an abundance of resources or capital. So thank you for that. Well, Carolyn, I think you've been monitoring the chat and the Q&A. Are there a couple of questions that maybe have resonated or percolated up to the top?
Yeah, we honestly have a lot of good questions, both in the Q&A and the chat. So I apologize in advance if we don't get to touch on your question, but you all have a lot of good topics that you've brought up. One that I'm seeing as sort of a recurring theme in the Q&A is just sort of what we've been talking about, bringing more attention to transfer students, particularly at 4-year institutions that might not be focused on it typically. So the question is, What is the biggest advice you may have on how we can start to bring more attention to transfer populations on the four-year university level, especially when some universities may not want to have the conversation centered around transfer students, i.e. cutting the red tape?
I'm happy to start. That is $1 million question. I think that's where you are. So I think there's a few ways to approach this, and I'm sure there's plenty more. The first two things that come to my mind, and this is something that you'll see even reflected in Tatiana mentioned the transfer playbook and those strategies. Those are definitely a piece of literature everyone should check out and really think about how institutions are hoping to make the case. But there's some ways that you can do this. I think when you think about the conversations now are evolving to really consider the ways that community college transfer students are helping to meet workforce and demands, right? And what are those high need fields, career fields that your region might really be needing talent, and transfer students, community college transfer students particularly, could be a vehicle to meeting that talent demand. And so really centering it around your institutional goals, taking a look, and I'm speaking from the research that we've done, but also from my experience on a campus, is really looking at the strategic plans of your institution and really going through it and doing an exercise to identify what are the ways that community college students help to move us further and closer to achieving these goals as an institution. So while your angle is obviously going to be putting emphasis on transfer students, the goal is to help your institutional leaders to see how transfer students are actually helping them to accomplish so many more goals of the institution. And so making that alignment is going to be really critical. And of course, working with your institutional research teams to get as much student data as you can to really understand what's happening, really show some numbers and some great opportunities that exist within your campus community. I hope that's helpful.
I think that there are, again, $1 million question, and I'm gonna pick like two specific things that I think would be tremendously helpful. The first one, it showcased in the transfer playbook, but has to do with the alignment in courses and pathways that happen between community colleges and four-year institutions, and really getting faculties in both ends at community colleges and 4 years to sit down and figure out what the best pathways are for their students and how to make that transition easy and successful. However, when I think about this sounds kind of like something that you first have to bring the leadership in and then get them to sit on the table and discuss specific topics. But another selling point around transfer, especially for four-year institutions and perhaps for the most selective institutions who, again, going back to this idea of incentives, may feel that they really don't need to go into the pool of transfer students to keep their enrollment numbers up, has to do with what transfer students can bring to the campus in terms of differences of perspectives, diversity, building a community that's more rich and that provides different views of the world to your own very selective students in a very changing environment, politically speaking, around affirmative action, about the availability of financial aid for selective institutions and perhaps expensive institutions. The transfer pathway from a community college to a four-year institution, to one of these four-year institutions, is one of the mechanisms that these institutions can use to keep their diversity up, to bring students, again, with different backgrounds to the campus, and to keep on bringing very capable students. They can save money by taking these courses at the community college. So for the four-year institution, providing a full package of financial aid wouldn't be much of a concern, because if they align their pathways, if they don't make them retake all the classes, then they can finance just a couple of years or so. So really like identifying those possibilities in terms of, given how things are changing in the higher education space, what are community colleges bringing to campus? I think it's really important and a way to kind of like think about the messaging on these conversations.
Thank you all both for those answers. It kind of highlights both the need to have peer mentors and student leaders involved in this advocacy, but also understanding that as we mentioned before, the burden cannot fall directly to the student, that four-year institutions themselves need to be heavily involved in the work. As a shameless plug, I'm also going to put a link to a report that I co-authored with Catherine Hartman from NC State, a former panelist on the Transfer Summit herself, where we highlight some stories of staff and administrators about how they've worked with advocating for transfer student support on their campus. The one that pops to my mind is someone who gave their transfer champion on campus a wrestling style WWE belt that they got to keep for the year, to highlight to kind of raise awareness of transfer champions on their campus. So yeah, but I think that's going to be the time that we have for our panelists. We do want to leave time for our amazing student presenters. So Tatiana, Bernard, thank you so much. I know I personally took a lot out of your insights, and I know from the chat that a lot of others did as well. And we thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
please-
Thank you, everyone.
And please check out the playbook. It's out now.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. The Tackling Transfer and the Transfer Playbook from both Aspen and CCRC are foundational reads for anyone interested in transfer. So now we are going to our student presentation. I'm pleased to introduce student presenters from my alma mater. We have Texas Tech University's Transfer Ambassadors. This group is dedicated to supporting transfer students as they transition to Texas Tech and throughout their academic journey. They help build connections, get involved both on and off campus, and develop essential leadership skills. Representing the program today, we have Fred Werman, we have Gabe Ruiz, we have Chrislyn Stokes, Mimi Domino, and Caleb Beard, along with their supervisor, Sarah Dameron, who serves as the program manager for Transfer Success. Thank you all for joining us and sharing about your program and highlighting the important role of peer leaders in transfer support. And we will kick it over to you.
Awesome. Give me a moment as I make sure to share correctly. You know how that can go. So I will just beg your patience. But my name is Sarah Dameron. I work with our transfers specifically under a department called Student Engagement. And we're going to make sure this is working. I think you can see all of this, my friends. Does everyone have a big, beautiful screen showing? Excellent. So we work under a department called Student Engagement here on campus, first year experience specifically, and we focus highly on the first year of students at Texas Tech, both in the transfer areas and in first year experience areas. And so we try to create programs that reach students where they are. That's our goal. The most important piece of what we're trying to do specifically is we have a team of transfer ambassadors, and they are they're our go out and do people. They are the face of what we do here. I get to work behind the scenes a lot. And so some of the things that I'm going to share with you today are going to be, I'm going to start with just a couple of small details. What you're going to hear from them is several things. Our culture here is really about engagement and leadership and mentorship. And so there's lots of different ways that we involve students, and we really try to do that in all three of those ways here, especially in the transfer programming. And so in that behind the scenes world, they're going to share a little bit of that with you, but then we're going to pivot to what is our typical Transfer Connection programs presentation. And we do this presentation everywhere. We do it in lots of different phases of connection with different transfer students, some that haven't even committed to being Red Raiders yet. And so I'm going to let them tell you all about that. I do want to just brag a little bit on these students. They have worked really hard to be here today and to pivot this presentation for you specifically, and to make sure that you get the best of that. But they may pivot into like presentation mode because they are used to giving this conversation to lots of other students, and they do it at random resource fairs and tabling, and they do it in a formal presentation space just like this one. And so you'll get to hear a lot about their passion for what they get to do and why they've chosen to be transfers. They'll also pop in their stories a little bit. I love of what was said earlier from Bernard about student storytelling and just how they've experienced things as students that I can't identify with, you can't identify with in the same way that they can with their peers. And I fully believe and just applauded internally at all of the comments about peer mentors doing their work. I agree that it's on me too to connect with people on our campuses as well. So I've loved all these comments today. I'm super encouraged. But my favorite part of what I get to do is to pivot to faces like these, to these students. They focus on peer engagement. They're really passionate about it, and they work really hard. They reach out to connect to other students, either with phone calls or other sorts of connection points. It's not just marketing, but it's intentional and curious connection. What would help you? What would serve you? How could we be doing a better job of meeting you where you are? And asking lots of questions is just as important as having those answers, I think. And so they do that on a regular basis. They offer one-on-one meetings, one-on-one mentorship. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. These students are actually responsible for planning our social events and our workshops and our events that we offer for all of our engagement programs, specifically for transfers and for beyond those programs as well. They commit to a full academic year. So these students are employees, but they are also committing to a full school year. And the purpose of that is really just longevity and legacy. We talk a lot about legacy here. What do you want to leave here? You're here for a shorter time. So what does that mean? What do you want to leave on campus? And so they commit, most of them commit to 1 year, and then we don't lose them and they commit to their second year. So we get them for a long time while they're here. We're super glad to have that. They also bring their personal experiences. They know what it's like. And this is one of our, typical slides that we show students. We know what you can expect from this experience. We know how to get you into this. And so they're going to talk to you a little bit more on the social engagement side rather than the advising and enrollment side. We have an incredible team of people that do that here on our campus that we work really closely with. But these students are focused on, we know that coming to school and getting a degree is valuable and important and wonderful. But I truly believe that, like, if a student comes to campus and they don't know who their people are and they don't know how to get help, then we haven't done our job. And so we are doing our best to do that job every day. And these students are a huge part of that. So with that, you won't hear any more from me until the end. And they are going to just tell you a lot about their program they are incredibly proud of. So hit it, friends.
Hi, my name is Fred. I'm a transfer from a local community college here in Lubbock, South Plains College, where I graduated with my associates in culinary arts, and I transferred to Texas Tech to pursue my restaurant, hotel, and institutional management degree. So I deal a lot with hospitality and a lot of person-to-person relationships. So yeah, I'm going to talk to you today about 3 different phases of communication. First, the first time that we actually will connect with potential transfer students is before their official, before they're actually Red Raiders are designated at Transfer Visit Day, which is hosted by admissions. So we assist admissions in that by giving presentations to potential students before they come into Texas Tech, and we show them what it means to be a Red Raider. The second phase, that we will see transfers is that their first time as an actual Red Raider at Red Raider orientation, where we will again be doing tabling, telling them more about transfer life, all the fun stuff that we get to do, welcome them into the community, and more presentations. And then lastly, during the first year as a Red Raider, we participate in co-collaborative programs that involve both transfer and Red Raiders to help acclimate them to the campus and welcome them into the community.
You would mute. Okay.
Hi, my name is Chrislyn. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I transferred from a community college out there. I'm currently a senior here at Texas Tech University, and my experience at Texas Tech has been really great. And it's funny enough that I'm doing communications because I'm a communication studies major, which is basically like anthropology or psychology behind communicating. And my first time coming here, being so far away from home, I bumped into Sarah, and she was telling me all these great things about transfer experience and things on campus for transfer students. And it immediately felt like home for me, just meeting my people. I now have friends that I consider like family, and I now have this opportunity to be an ambassador. And from that, I got this opportunity from communicating through all the channels like ambassadors and pro staff. And I got that from GroupMe, which is the fastest way to get connected on campus that we have available for all transfer students. Then the second part is the official Texas Tech marketing. So being a transfer student, you get tailor-made emails for you to come to events, to find out things that's happening for you so you won't be left out and you can find your people. And the last resort is our website, which is showcasing our programs that we have available for you along with ambassadors. So people who come from like the deep South, maybe Florida, South Carolina, can resonate and have the same experience with me because I'm over 16 hours away from home. And sometimes you want to have that person you relate with. And so we have our bios on that website along with other things that you can connect with us with.
Oh, sorry.
That went backwards.
That's
Hello,
all right.
everybody. My name is Caleb, and I have transferred from the United States Navy. At least in tech, I know that all of our military incoming are considered transfer students. So, how I got involved on this campus and kind of how my whole story went is I came out of the Navy and I spent roughly a year because I'd missed the deadline to get into colleges, just outside and working. And I came to tech and I had kind of realized I hadn't transitioned well from the military to where I am now. Not that I was having any major issues, but it was clear that there was a disconnect. So, one of the ways that I went about getting rid of that disconnect was I went to our Tech Leadership Institute, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, where basically I learned a lot about my leadership style, who I am as a person, and then also all of my peers who are going to surround me through the entirety of the rest of my time getting my degree. Oh yeah, I'm also a mechanical engineering major. Uh, all right. So, that being said, there are 5 ways for us to get involved on campus. We have our social events, we have our Mentor Tech, Transfer Texans, Transfer Leadership Connection Retreat, affectionately known as TLC, and our Tech Leadership Institute. And all of these 5 will involve one, if not all 3 of the things on the next slide. Sarah, please. They'll all involve making friends, getting connected, and just being a leader in general.
Hi everyone, my name is Mimi. I transferred from a community college back in my hometown called Carrollton, which is near Dallas. I went to a community college called Collin Community College. I transferred here to Tech in the fall of 2022 and picked up this job the semester after. I love it here at Texas Tech, and I will say everything presented in this presentation is one of the main reasons why I love Tech so much and everything. So yeah. First, when we start off with involving transfer students, we have something called social events, where you can meet people and grab free stuff. First, we have Transfer Welcome Week. This starts at the day before the semester starts and that following week along. First, we have something called Personalized Campus Maps. This is one of the biggest events we have for transfer students. Basically, us transfer ambassadors will sit down with every transfer student coming in with their class schedule and where the buildings are going to be and where they're living, whether it's on or off campus. And we just kind of help them figure out how to get from point A to point B, figure out the best advice, whether to take our buses on campus, whether to take their car. We try and navigate with their timing of their schedules, with how far apart the buildings are from that. This event is really sweet and interesting. They come in extremely nervous and just ready to like take on the semester, and just a simple 5 to 7 minutes with us, helping them navigate everything going with navigate their whole schedule, along with just telling them who we are and what we do. It's actually interesting. One of my fellow colleagues, Chrislyn, that was our first interaction. I remember her being, I'm gonna call you out a little bit. She was extremely nervous coming in. I sat with her. I just helped her navigate her schedule and everything. And then we went from there, and she was killing it. And now, again, with this job, she's one of my best friends, and it's been great. Next, we have our welcome day and t-shirt swap. This is the first day of classes for the semester. We'll have a booth kind of set up outside of our student union building. And what we like to do, we give you a nice fresh shirt, and you gotta trade in your previous college shirt. Much trans students have a bunch of shirts from their previous college. So we swap them for a nice new tech shirt along with a nice free meal. I think we did some pulled pork sandwiches in the last fall, and it was a really big hit. On Friday, we have Hub City Fest. Fun thing about this, Lubbock is the hub city of West Texas. People don't realize how much there is to do here at Lubbock, such as it's such a small town. But during Hub City Fest, we have businesses from all over the town coming into one of our parking lots with a booth, telling us about whether it's a restaurant or a business. They'll hand out free samples and so on. And one thing about this event, along with the next one I'll talk about, we all meet up beforehand. All us trans students will connect through GroupMe, explaining we're going to meet beforehand. We'll play a nice little icebreaker game, and then we walk over to the event after. And it's a big turnout, one of the biggest events we have on campus, and it's really fun. Next, we have Raider Roundup. This is the day after. This happens at our beautiful Urbanovsky Park. And again, same thing with Hub City Fest. We all meet before that. That way we have someone to go with. And if you connected with someone the day before, y'all could socialize more as well. At Raider Roundup, we have a local Lubbock band that performs. We give out free t-shirts. We give out free Whataburger food, free cookies. And it's just such a fun event. The weather is also perfect for both of those days. And it's just a really big turnout. Monday, we take a little break, and then Tuesday, we have Rec Center Game Night. This is a little new one we did. It was a big hit. We go to our rec center and we just play relay games. This is definitely more for our competitive transfer students who want to have a fun time. And yeah, we just play games. We do relay races. Me, I'm not as competitive, so I'm just there for the fun vibes, but I'm also a good cheerleader for sure. And yeah, along with that, we also get free food. And then on Wednesday, we have Transfer Texans Kickoff Night. This is an event we have in one of our big ballrooms, and we get a good spiel on one of the slides that will be presented soon on Transfer Texans, which is an organization made exclusively for transfer students. So you have all these events, you meet a bunch of people, you get free food, free t-shirts. This is one of the events that I went to. I went to Transfer Kickoff Night specifically. That's where I met all my close friends. That's where I met everyone, and it was just a big turnout. So yeah.
All right, I think that's me. Hi, my name is Gabriel Ruiz. I am a transfer student from Corpus Christi, Texas. I originally had a degree path in public services, but I changed that where I'm here at Texas Tech studying renewable energy. And I've been a transfer student here for about a year now, and I'll be graduating in May, so I'm in the senior classification. It's really exciting. I'll get into this slide, and otherwise, I just really want to say that I'm excited to be here today, and I hope we can show you some interesting things. A lot of the things that we as transfer ambassadors like to encourage for this new students on campus is to just explore Lubbock, because one of our first events that we do throughout the year is to show them local shops and restaurants where we'll play board games at a local coffee shop, or we'll attend a freebie or cheaper night at a restaurant. And it's just a goal to get them connected with different students and with a whole new crowd of people so that they can start to feel like Lubbock is home. And then we start to focus in and go through the Amazing Race, which is going to be a long form trivia game where we are finding different monuments on campus, and you learn some trivia about Texas Tech and some of the history and just some of the fun things that are offered that you get to experience while you're on Texas Tech. And we really like to encourage more exploration of the campus with the rec center. And so I personally didn't get to attend this, but I had heard from several friends where it was a great opportunity to explore our very extensive rec. And it was just a great night to hang out with friends, maybe play some basketball and lift some weights. We're really proud of the fact that during the springtime, we have red tulips. And so during Arbor Day, there's a whole student crowd who comes out and gets to plant all those, and they will pop up after their buds finish forming, excuse me. And that's been a great opportunity that I've attended every year that I've been on campus. And I just love seeing them whenever I'm walking around. I really recommend the First Friday Art Trail to every student that I ever have met, because there's so many different upcoming artists that are in Lubbock. As Mimi said, it is the hub city. So there are several artists who are just trying to make a difference in like the different ways that they make their art and the way that they present themselves to a newer class of students that are appearing on campus. And it's just down the street, so it's a great opportunity to explore the other things that this city has to offer. The corn maze is really fun. We, as transfer students, attend that depending on whether or not it's being held together by the campus. And it's a local farmer who will cut a specific route in his massive cornfield, and you answer different trivia questions printed out on a little sheet of paper. And you can go off of base like movies or different trivia about like Texas Tech, or even just like
history, and it's a lot of fun just getting to know other people and getting lost in the corn. And our final event for the end of the year in December is going to be the Carol of Lights. And that's a yearly event where Texas Tech puts up over 6 miles worth of lights all over the Texas Tech campus. And we have a sort of lighting the tree moment where they put on a massive celebration with fireworks and several sponsored events. And it's just a great opportunity to see all the different year-round Texas Tech and Lubbock traditions. And I really just enjoy being able to show any student that I'm able to talk to, like the different interesting and fun things that Texas Tech has to offer.
All right, hello everybody. Caleb again, here to talk to you a little bit more about our more personalized approach to each student. It's our Mentor Tech program. We're trying to get people connected to Red Raiders and making it their community. The first thing we do is we have like a big old sheet that we fill out. It'll ask you like what your degree is, what's your hobbies, everything like that. And we try to pair you with mentors that are either similar, farther along, or even just peers themselves. They can be anything from alumni to professional staff and professors who volunteer for it, or myself as well as a peer. I would be one of the mentors. I personally have 5 of them right now. And then once we have our mentors and our mentees situation set up, we go into our one-on-one mentorship where it's a personalized pairing with each mentor to meet everybody's individual needs and goals. While going through this process, we also have workshops, which are our interactive sessions on topics about what our student life is like, our career growth, personally, professional development, things that they're going to need to know and may not already know or may already know, which is why it's a one-on-one tailored kind of thing. Then next we have our social events, much like Gabe just described. All of these are gonna fall under this. There are opportunities to go out with other peers at events on campus and in the community just to make new friends. And then we also provide QR codes, as you can see on the right side of our screen. Usually that's a pretty good way. A lot of people would love to just pause in the middle of our presentations, take scans of the QR code so that they have it for later when they're less bombarded in orientation.
Hi. Sorry. So Transfer Texan is our student org that we have for transfer students, only by transfer students.
All right.
So for the 4 pillars for Transfer Texans is our social events, volunteer events, professional development, and intramurals. I so happen to be the president of this wonderful org, and we make sure for our social events that we go around Lubbock to make sure that incoming students have an idea of what they can do around Lubbock that's fun. For volunteer events, we find it very important that we give back to our community because that's essential in life. For professional development, we take like the social and along with the development skills that we have on campus to help us become leaders because we know we only have maybe a year or 2 on campus. And so having professional development prepares us on our accelerated journey as transfer students. And when it comes to intramurals, I am one of those people that loves to compete. So that is one of my things. I love it. But sometimes I'm not that great. So it's great to have other people on the team to help carry it because I have the right heart, but not the right actions because I'm not that great at volleyball. But we have all this for our student org, and it's really great, and I enjoy it. And I know that the other students as well enjoy it because it helps them find a home and even a place to do like socializing because school is all work, but we want to have fun too.
Hello again. So this next part is going to be about the Transfer Leadership Connection Retreat, or as Caleb said, TLC. And this is mostly just tailored to transfer students because we want specific transfer crowds to come on out to a local campsite that is a couple of an hour and a half or so away from Texas Tech campus. And it's just a weekend escape where we teach them about leadership skills and put them through mildly stressful situations where we hope to ensure that their leadership grows and just otherwise encourage them to make better friends and encourage others It's a pretty quick little weekend retreat, but I find that it's a I'm sorry, I got caught off guard by that comment. Yes, I realize that that is probably a scary term, but it's just to encourage them to branch out and push out of their comfort zone and really just build how they basis their idea of how you can be a leader and different ways that you can connect with others so that you can become an even better leader in the future. This is included as just a base $50 price, and that includes the food for the weekend, a pretty comfortable bed to sleep in, a fun day spent where we're doing ropes courses and different leadership activities. And we really just make sure that this all occurs on an away game weekend, because we recognize that the students on campus really would prefer to attend a football game where there's the vibes that same day. But we also recognize that this is a great opportunity for them to learn more about leadership and forming more relationships.
And for the sake of time, we usually have a video that we show to our students here. I'm going to go ahead and skip it. But it's just a feature that we typically show students that are with us when we're at those presentations about what they can expect, and lake time and pool time and retreat time. So I'll move ahead. Oh, it decided to play anyway. I'm going to pause and make this go ahead. Let's go, friends. I'm so sorry. I need my arrow to change. Y'all, I told you that would happen. My team. Hold on. Excuse me, everyone. I apologize. I was trying to save us some time. Okay, everybody. The fifth way.
Alrighty. So I'm going to talk to you about the Tech Leadership Institute. So for me, this is kind of the origin story for how I got to where I am today. It's a way to be mentored by others, other transfers, and to build your relationship skills while along the way. So it is an 8-week program that is completely free. And during those 8 weeks, we have it split up into different core competencies that are needed in the professional or in like the professional world as you're getting ready to leave college. So like depending on what week it is, we will focus on each individual core competency. We meet, every week for 2 hours. And each of these meetings is going to be led by either people like me or my peers as well, and that have presented today, that have already been through the program and have that leadership knowledge already on hand. So kind of the competencies, so sorry, I'm stumbling, that we go over is self-awareness, your personal leadership style, like your critical thinking, communication, and how to build your resume and how to sit down in a professional interview and actually communicate with your future employer. We are broken up into small groups, so transfers will be with transfers and first years will be with first years. It just helps further that relationship between transfers and everyone together. And as well, at the end of it, after you finish, you get a professional graduation, a professional headshot. By that point, you'll have a really good resume, and it's completely free. And we do have an application for it so that we do find the students that actually really want to get the most out of it.
This end may seem abrupt. We just want to make sure that we're at the end of these things. We've loved sharing with you. I'm super thankful to my team specifically for just being open and willing to share so much about their life with so many of you. We'd love to take questions, or if there's time for that, Jeff. I know that you have maybe some other things you need to wrap up with today, but we've been very grateful to share, and I hope that was helpful to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you all so much. This was really wonderful to hear about your focus on getting them engaged and building up leadership right away. A couple of things that I noticed that came through in the questions. One, and yes, we are hoping to wrap up by 2:30 Texas Central Time, but getting buy-in for students to attend, a weekend-long leadership development camp, to come to events throughout that welcome week. How do you get that investment from students?
May I start? And I'm going to hand it off to someone.
Please, yes.
I think I'm just going to say it is an endless pursuit. So I feel your concern in that question. How do I get them to say yes? And our students feel it too. And I can just tell you that anytime they are representing themselves on campus, I know that they're speaking about these programs. I know that word of mouth is just as important as, all of the marketing efforts and all the communication efforts. I'm going to be honest, the GroupMe has been the most effective thing we've ever done. Students like it. It's quick, it's easy, it's on the phone. They can comment. The other thing that's really cool about GroupMe is it provides an opportunity for us to post events, and they can put an RSVP and see who else is joining. So they can see, oh, lots of people are going to this, or no one's going to this event. Maybe I should invite some people, and that actually helps us be really wiser with our resources as well. So and again, we've had to pivot and say, this event is not super well attended. Our kind of student has changed. Maybe we're doing things differently than we did before COVID. And so I think there's a lot of we try to be as aware as possible. That data is super important, just to know how many came, how many are here at these events. And but again, I think at the end of the day, everything I could do from the professional staff level, while effective, I hope, is not nearly as effective as these faces that you met today, speaking about their experience and inviting people and passing out t-shirts and being present on campus. We work really hard to make sure these students are well trained and extremely intentional about their interactions, whether mentoring one-on-one or at a table. And so I think it's a never quit, never let up sort of thing. And I also think if I made effort 1 year, I might not see the fruition of that effort towards gaining attendance at something for another year. I mean, as we know, the wheel turns slowly in higher ed. And I think that's true of student awareness as well. So putting out that effort at the beginning, it takes a long time then from, Gabe, for instance, being one of my students who attended something, to finally being able to give back and create that event or be a part of that event. That's a long-term investment in him that then will bear more fruit later. So I think it's just never quit, never give up, and keep talking about what you're doing and remain vigilant in that would be my piece of advice there.
Oh, thanks so much, Sarah.
Yeah.
I do have a second question, but maybe Carolyn, if you could go back to your slides and get our Padlet QR code up, or drop the link in the chat.
Yeah, Sarah, would you mind
Yes.
stopping
Excuse
your screen
me.
share?
I forgot I was shared.
No problem.
So as we go into our last question, we're going to put a Padlet up. If you haven't used it before, it's just a place where you can kind of drop like a sticky note. We're just hoping to get some takeaways that people are kind of leaving with from today, to learn about what resonated most with y'all. And it's just kind of a way to share out with everybody, so we can all kind of see our own, someone might have taken away something completely different that you hadn't thought about before. And so as y'all go into that, use that QR code right there. My other question was for Chrislyn, if she's still there. I think they just went off screen.
She's there.
All right, Chrislyn. So one of the questions in the Q&A was about differentiating transfers from other students on campus, and being president of your transfer student org. I did see areas where like the Leadership Institute seemed to be a way where they're connecting with other student leaders on campus. But do you ever encounter pushback of, I don't want to be only with transfer students. How do I get more engaged with the broader community? Or is that something that you're mindful of in your programming?
Well, when it comes to transfer Texans, I have to make sure that it's not just solely us kind of sticking off as a mentor on campus, because I'm also a transfer ambassador as well. I gauge with my audience. Like anytime I have something I want to plan for my student org, I always ask them, these are the options, and it's a widespread, because I never want to isolate us, but typically my group of people do a lot of things like TLI. I've done that. It was a great experience, and some of my people from my student org have done that as well. And I always make sure to plug them in, so they have the opportunity to intermingle and to gain their Red Raider identity as a Texas Tech student, as well maintain this specific audience where it says, these are my people, because you understand the journey is a transfer. So it's a nice duality with both in my work.
Great. Well, I appreciate that. And so first, just thank you all for the presentation. It was wonderful. I transferred to Texas Tech 23 years ago. It's weird to say that, 23 years ago. If these programs had been in place there, it would have been an excellent way to make that transition. I was still able to find ways to get involved, but I really, personally appreciate what y'all are doing and know that it's making a difference for a lot of students. So thank you for sharing what you do and giving us some tip. Group me, it seems to be the way to go. That's my big takeaway for the presentation. So Carolyn, if you don't mind going back and maybe seeing if we can highlight some of our Padlet takeaways as we prepare our spinning
Yes, let me
wheel.
pull that up. Actually, I think for the sake of time, I might do our spinning wheel first, just
Oh,
so we
yeah,
can
let's do
get
it.
our raffle winner, just
Yeah.
because I know many of you probably have to log off, but I want to try to get as many people as you're still on. Okay, so can you see my spinning wheel?
And yeah,
All right.
a lot of
So
names.
spin the wheel.
Good luck to everyone.
Okay, Alyssa Wilson, are you here?
Can you identify in the chat or come off mic? I hope you're still here. Maybe not everyone else in the call hopes you're still here, but I hope you're still here.
Alyssa Wilson.
We may
Okay,
have
it doesn't look like we still have an Alyssa Wilson in our participants list, so I might spin us again. Lauren, are you here? Please identify yourself. Lauren Held.
I see
Lauren, if you're here.
there's a guest Lauren, but it does not say Lauren with a last name.
Okay, last call for Lauren. Otherwise, we're going to have a third spin. The excitement is building. Okay. Danielle, are you here?
There's still 170 of us in this call. I don't know why it's only picking people who had to leave.
Danielle, are you here?
I am here.
Oh, is that Danielle?
Hi, did I hear it? I'm here.
Yes, you did.
All right.
Congratulations, you
Thank
are a
you.
winner. Thank you for sticking on the call. We will be in touch about getting you your AirPods.
Thank you.
But let me share the Padlet screen.
And as we're doing that, I'll preview tomorrow. We have another great set of panelists. We'll have a new student group presenting to us, all about intra and inter-campus connections and relationships and the importance of building those out.
Absolutely. Thank you all for sharing your reflections on the Padlet. I encourage you to read through these and connect with each other because there has been a lot of good discussion in the chat today. And I wish we could have gotten to all of your questions because there were so many great questions that came up. So I really encourage you all to connect with each other. Feel free to exchange contact information, follow each other's transfer accounts. But I appreciate you all taking the time to reflect on what you've learned today. So please do bring this back to your peers or your colleagues at your institution. And thank you so much. I'll share my screen just to promote tomorrow's event. But for those of you who will be joining us tomorrow, we look forward to seeing you then. As Jeff said, we will be discussing transfer connections, both within institutions and between institutions. And we have Shelby and Nick who will be joining us as our panelists tomorrow. And our student presenters will be from Hostos Community College in New York. So thank you all so much for participating today. It has been an honor to host this event. So great to see so many of you all on the call. We will be sending out the resources that we discussed today. But for those of you who I will see tomorrow, I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And thank you for joining us this year.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.